Alejandra, a modest woman, entered the hospital with her heart racing and fear taking over. The bright lights of the hospital cafeteria and the sterile air frightened her, but the need to save her sick daughter, Cecilia, overcame all fears. "Someone, please help me," she pleaded, her voice full of desperation. In her arms she felt the weight of Cecilia's fragile body and the warmth radiating from it. Alejandra knew that her daughter's condition was getting worse and worse. As her panic grew, she approached Alfonso, the doctor on duty. He looked up from the computer, his expression indifferent. "What's wrong?" he asked, without getting up from his chair. "We can't see people without an appointment," he added in a cold, distant voice. Alejandra felt a lump in her chest. Her throat was tight and her body was shaking with anxiety. "My son has had a high fever for many days," she explained in a trembling voice. "I've tried everything but it's not working. Please, doctor, I beg you." Alfonso sighed, clearly impatient. "Do you have insurance or money to pay for the consultation?" he asked, looking directly at Alejandra. She bowed her head, feeling humiliated. "I don't have enough money," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I can pay somehow. I promise." Alfonso crossed his arms and shook his head. "I can't do anything without paying in advance," he said firmly. "I'm sorry. But you'll have to find somewhere else." Alejandra felt extremely hopeless. "My baby is getting worse by the minute," she thought, as tears began to roll down her face. "My daughter needs help now. I can't waste time looking elsewhere." Her eyes were filled with pain and pleading. "Please, doctor," she pleaded again, "I will do anything to save my daughter." Alfonso just stared at her coldly, showing no mercy. "The rules are the rules," he said, turning his attention back to the computer screen. "If you can't pay, I can't help you." Alfonso's coldness and indifference stabbed deep into Alejandra's heart like a sword. She pressed Cecilia to her chest, feeling her daughter's feverish body tremble. "Thank you so much," she choked out, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "God bless you." Alejandra climbed into the car, carefully holding Cecilia tightly in her arms. Ricardo looked at the little girl one last time, determined to help in any way he could. "Come on, we don't have time to waste," he said, and immediately sped the car toward the nearest hospital. Every moment of the long drive seemed endless to Alejandra. She looked at Cecilia worriedly and prayed silently, "Please, let's find a good doctor." She squeezed her daughter's hand, while Ricardo skillfully dodged traffic and sped up when necessary. "I think she'll be fine," Ricardo said, trying to comfort Alejandra. When they arrived at the hospital, Ricardo quickly got out of the car and helped Alejandra get Cecilia inside. "I'll go with you," he said, and without delay they headed to the emergency room. "We need urgent help," Ricardo shouted loudly, drawing the attention of doctors and nurses. "This girl is very critical and needs immediate treatment." The medical team immediately approached, realizing the seriousness of the situation. Alejandra was relieved and happy as she handed Cecilia over to the doctors. "Please save my daughter," she said urgently, her voice filled with emotion. The doctors reassured her, promising that they would do everything they could. "We'll take care of her, don't worry," one of the doctors said, looking Alejandra straight in the eyes. "We need you to fill out some forms, but first, let's stabilize her condition." Ricardo stood next to Alejandra, offering his support. "You did the right thing," he said, trying to comfort her. "She'll be okay." Alejandra nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, gratitude clear in her voice. Ricardo smiled and shook his head. "There's no need to thank me," he replied, her safety is the only thing that matters. As she waits for news about Cecilia, Alejandra remembers everything that happened that day. What a miracle, she thought, remembering the taxi driver who showed up just when she needed him most. I'll never forget this kindness, she said to herself, looking at Ricardo sitting next to her in the waiting room. Thank you so much, she said again, her voice full of sincerity. Ricardo smiled back, knowing he had done the right thing. Finally, a doctor came out of the emergency room and approached Alejandra. Your daughter is stable, he announced with a comforting smile. It's a shock, but she'll be okay. Alejandra felt a wave of relief wash over her, so much so that she almost fell to her knees. She murmured a thank you, though those words could not express the deep gratitude she felt. Thank you so much, Alejandra said, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. God bless you. She carefully got into the car, holding Cecilia tightly in her arms. Ricardo looked at the little girl one last time, determined to help in any way he could. Come on, we have no time to waste, he said, and immediately sped the car toward the nearest hospital. Every moment of the long drive seemed endless to Alejandra. She looked at Cecilia worriedly and silently prayed, please, let's find a good doctor. She squeezed her daughter's hand, while Ricardo skillfully dodged traffic and sped up when necessary. I think she'll be okay, Ricardo said, trying to comfort Alejandra. When they arrived at the hospital, Ricardo quickly got out of the car and helped Alejandra get Cecilia inside. I'll go with you, he said, and without delay they headed to the emergency room. We need urgent help. Ricardo shouted loudly, drawing the attention of doctors and nurses. This little girl is very critical and needs immediate treatment. The medical team immediately came over, realizing the severity of the situation. Alejandra was relieved and happy as she handed Cecilia over to the doctors. Please save my daughter, she said urgently, her voice filled with emotion. The doctors reassured her, promising that they would do everything they could. We will take care of her, don't worry, one of the doctors said, looking Alejandra straight in the eyes. We need you to fill out some forms. But first, let's stabilize her condition. Ricardo stood next to Alejandra, offering his support. You did the right thing, he said, trying to comfort her. She'll be okay. Alejandra nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. I don't know how to thank you, he said, gratitude clear in his voice. Ricardo smiled and shook his head. There's no need to thank me, he replied, her safety is the only thing that matters. As she waits for news about Cecilia, Alejandra remembers everything that happened that day. What a miracle, she thought, remembering the taxi driver who showed up just when she needed him most. I will never forget this kindness, she said to herself. Looking at Ricardo sitting next to her in the waiting room. Thank you so much, he said again, his voice full of sincerity. Ricardo smiled back, knowing he had done the right thing. Finally, a doctor emerged from the emergency room and approached Alejandra. Your daughter is stable, he announced with a comforting smile. It's a shock, but she'll be fine. Alejandra felt a wave of relief wash over her, so much so that she almost fell to her knees. She murmured a thank you, though those words could not express the deep gratitude in her heart. Ricardo, who had been waiting patiently all this time, also smiled and shared his relief and joy at knowing that Cecilia was stable and receiving timely treatment. Alejandra felt extremely relieved. Although she was still worried, she knew that the worst was over. The doctor reported that Cecilia needed rest and home care, as well as some medications that Alejandra could purchase at the hospital pharmacy. She will recover with time and proper care, the doctor said, giving her a comforting smile. Alejandra thanked the doctor and then turned to Ricardo, who had been by her side throughout the wait. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done, he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You're like an angel who appeared in our lives at the right time." The taxi driver shook his head, humbled by the words of thanks. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "I'm just glad your daughter is okay." He then helped Alejandra get Cecilia into the car, ready to take them home. "Let's go straight home," Ricardo said as he started the engine. On the way home, the atmosphere seemed less tense, but Alejandra was still worried about Cecilia's recovery. "I need to do everything right so she gets better soon," he thought, looking at his daughter sleeping in his arms. "Cecilia is all I have." When he arrived at Alejandra's modest home, Ricardo parked his car in front of the door and got out to help. "Let me help you carry her inside," he said, carefully hugging Cecilia. Alejandra opened the door and showed her daughter's room. "Here," she said, pointing to the bed where the girl would sleep. Ricardo gently placed Cecilia on the bed, making sure she was comfortable. "I hope Cecilia gets better soon," he said, looking at the sleeping girl. "She will recover quickly, I'm sure." Alejandra nodded gratefully. "Thank you for everything," he said, his words full of sincerity. Ricardo said his last goodbye and left, leaving Alejandra with her daughter. He sat next to Cecilia, holding her small, warm hand. "We'll get through this together," he whispered in a soft voice. "She will be fine. There are still good people in the world," she thought as she remembered Ricardo, who appeared just when she needed him the most. "That's why I will never give up." Alejandra walks into her small kitchen, a place that reflects her daily struggles. She began to prepare a soup for Cecilia, chopping vegetables with hands shaking from exhaustion. "I need to keep my strength up for her," she told herself, remembering the difficult times they had been through. With each piece of chopped vegetables, her mind wandered to the days when she raised her children alone after her husband died. "He is my support and now I have to be strong alone," she murmured, trying to dispel her sadness as she stirred the soup on the stove. Alejandra looked out the window and was lost in her thoughts. "My mother once told me that I had to be strong," she reflects, remembering the words once told to her by her mother, who also raised her alone. Alejandra's mother faced many difficulties while raising her only daughter, but she was always a determined woman. "You did it, and I can do it too," Alejandra thought, determination clear on her face. "Cecilia deserves everything I can give her." Feeling a new surge of courage, she carried the bowl of soup into Cecilia's room. "Hello, sweetheart," she said softly, carefully waking her daughter. Cecilia was still weak, but she tried to smile slightly, holding the bowl with shaking hands. Alejandra watched her daughter eat, feeling relieved and happy at the same time. Sadness lingered in Alejandra's mind as she looked at Cecilia. "Every little detail about her counts," she thought, "but I know we still have a long way to go." While Cecilia ate, Alejandra sat by the bed and began smoothing the sheets. "I always dreamed of giving my children a better life," she mused, remembering the days when she worked tirelessly to pay the bills. "But it seems that every day brings with it a new challenge." Looking at Cecilia, her heart tightened. "I will find a solution, no matter what," she promised herself, determined to become stronger. Alejandra remembers the moments after her husband's death, when she had to shoulder all the responsibilities alone. "I didn't expect things to be so difficult," she thought, remembering the sleepless nights and days of non-stop work. But now she knows she can't give up. She gently caressed Cecilia's face, feeling the softness of her daughter's skin. "She is everything to me," she thought, tears in her eyes as she continued to clean the house. Alejandra thought of the countless nights she had stayed up watching over Cecilia when she was sick. "I feel like I'm failing," she admitted to herself, struggling with feelings of guilt. But she knew she was doing the best she could. She wiped her tears away and smiled softly. Cecilia needs me to be strong. And that's exactly what I'm going to be. Alejandra looked around Cecilia's small room, decorated with a few toys and colorful posters. She deserves more, she thought, feeling a knot in her stomach, but this is the best I can offer right now. The humble environment contrasted with the abundant love Alejandra has for her daughter. I will continue to fight for us, she promised, feeling her resolve growing. At the end of the day, Alejandra sat next to Cecilia, who was sleeping soundly. You are my reason for living, she whispered, caressing her daughter's face. The tiredness was evident in her eyes, but her love for Cecilia kept her going. I will find a way to make our lives better, she thought, determined not to let the difficulties defeat her. Tomorrow is a new day and I will fight for you. Cecilia, the little girl, used to have health problems from a very young age. High fevers and constant pain made life difficult for both mother and child. Alejandra found it quite a challenge. Why does my daughter have to suffer so much? She thought, feeling helpless but still trying to be resilient. I will find a way, she told herself, determined for her beloved daughter. With that promise, Alejandra felt stronger, ready to face whatever came. I will never give up on you, she whispered as she looked at Cecilia. The next day, Dr. Alfonso started his morning as usual, quickly drinking a coffee while reviewing his agenda full of consultations for that day. Another long day, he thought, looking half-heartedly around his plush office, feeling proud and pressured at the same time. I need to maintain the standards my father expected. He remembers Dr. Marcelo Ortiz saying about the importance of maintaining the family reputation. That constant expectation makes him nervous as he treats patient after patient. Despite his impeccable experience, Alfonso's arrogant and dismissive attitude is evident when he interacts with low-income patients. They always come in unprepared, he thought, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. How can they expect to receive good care if they have no insurance or money? Alfonso hid his disdain with a forced smile. But impatience was still evident in his demeanor. During a brief break, Alfonso received a call from his father, reminding him of the tone that I had set. Dr. Marcelo said in a firm voice. Alfonso felt a heavy pressure on his chest. I can't let you down, he thought determinedly in a rare moment of reflection. Alfonso thought back to his childhood. I was always an only child, he thought, feeling both proud and burdened. From a young age he knew he had to carry on his family's legacy, which made him feel special but also carried a huge burden. I can't fail, he muttered to himself, staring out the office window. Dad always expected the best from me. The expectation of upholding the family reputation constantly worried him. Alfonso recalled a conversation with his father when he was a medical student, sitting in a stately office filled with awards and diplomas. You need to be the best, not only in your medical practice but also in your social standing, Dr. Marcelo said, his face stern. Our family has a reputation to uphold. You must continue my legacy, not only as a doctor but as a respected man in society. These words shaped the way Alfonso saw the world. I worked so hard to get where I am, he thought, both proud and exhausted. But it never seemed enough. Since that day, I have done everything I could to live up to his expectations, he reflected, feeling a knot in his chest. But something always seemed to be missing. Alfonso knew that any deviation from expected standards could be considered an unforgivable failure. Dr. Marcelo Ortiz is known as a man of uncompromising principles and unquestionable work ethics. He is respected by his colleagues and even feared by some. For him, medical excellence and maintaining an impeccable reputation have always been top priorities. Nothing less than perfection is acceptable, he often says, emphasizing the expectations instilled in him by his father. That constant pressure has shaped not only his career but also his personal life, making him a model of discipline and rigidity. Dr. Marcelo Ortiz begins his day as usual, reviewing reports and notes in his luxurious office. Another day of responsibility, he thinks, feeling the weight of the decisions he must make. He has always been a man of uncompromising principles, dedicating his life to medicine and building an impeccable reputation for his family. "I can't let anything affect this," he told himself, his gaze fixed solemnly on the paper before him. Lately, however, something new and disturbing had been brewing in his life. As he was reviewing a report, Dr. Marcelo paused and looked out the window, lost in thought. "I've discovered something that could change everything," he thought, feeling a pang of anxiety. "But I can't tell anyone yet." The secret he carried was heavy, and he knew that revealing it could have dire consequences. "I need to control this until I find a solution," he decided, realizing that the pressure of keeping it a secret was starting to weigh on him. But he knew he had no choice. Meanwhile, Alejandra continued to face the daily battles of raising her daughter. She worked tirelessly at various jobs to support Cecilia, determined to give her daughter a better life. She woke up at dawn, cleaning the office in the morning and working as a cashier at the supermarket in the afternoon. "Just one more day," she muttered to herself, ignoring the exhaustion that was taking over her body. But in her most difficult moments, Alejandra was faced with the choice between buying food or medicine for Cecilia. "How can I choose between her health and our survival?" she thought, torn. But somehow, she always found a way to keep going. "God, please help me find a solution," she prayed silently. Her faith was her last refuge, even in her most desperate moments. Alejandra never lost hope that one day, all these hardships would be a distant memory. She told herself, firmly believing in a better future. Every job Alejandra took, she saw as a step closer to her dream. "Cecilia will have the life I never had," she promised tearfully. "I will do this for you." When she finally got home after a long day, Cecilia ran to hug her tightly. Alejandra felt her heart filled with love and courage. "I love you too, honey," she replied, feeling empowered. "We will get through this together." Alejandra tearfully hugged Cecilia, promising a better future. "I will change our lives," she whispered, hugging her daughter tightly. "You will never have to worry about anything again." The warmth of Cecilia's hug filled Alejandra with new hope. Alejandra tried to seek financial and medical help in many places, but was repeatedly turned away. "I'm sorry, but we can't help without insurance," they would say, leaving her increasingly desperate. "How can I care for Cecilia?" she wondered, her anguish growing with each closed door. "Please help, my daughter is very sick," she pleaded, holding the crumpled medical record. "She needs urgent care," but the blank stares and cold answers only made her more desperate. "I can't give up," she thought, feeling crushed by despair. Alejandra began selling everything she could to raise money for Cecilia's treatment. "These things don't matter," she thought as she threw away her belongings. "Her life is more important." Each item sold represented a sacrifice but also a chance to save her daughter. "I will get the money I need," she resolved, with renewed determination fueled by necessity. On one particularly difficult night, Alejandra found herself running out of options. "I don't know who else to turn to," she thought, feeling herself on the brink of despair. "What am I going to do?" Cecilia lay beside her, gasping for air. "Please God, help me," she prayed, tears streaming down her face. "I can't lose my daughter," Alejandra whispered, in a moment of emotion, holding up Cecilia's picture and praying for a miracle. "Please save my daughter, God," she whispered through her tears. It's been several days since Dr. Marcelo Ortiz discovered the secret that could change his family's fate. I can't hide forever, he told himself, determined to face the problem head-on. I can't call myself a man if I don't deal with this. That morning he left home with firm determination and headed to a simple house on the outskirts. Although he knew this was necessary, he still felt a little nervous when he arrived. When he reached Alejandra's door, Dr. Marcelo took a deep breath and knocked. I hope she accepts this meeting, he thought as he heard footsteps on the other side. The door opened and Alejandra seemed surprised to see a stranger standing in front of her. Who are you? He asked, confused and a little skeptical. I'm Dr. Marcelo Ortiz. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. He replied, trying to sound calm and trustworthy. Although confused, Alejandra invited him in, fascinated by the surprise of this visit. Marcelo entered the simple house feeling a little lost but determined to move forward. I am Dr. Marcelo Ortiz, he began. I met your mother many years ago. At that time we were very young and had a temporary relationship, but then we lost contact. He saw the look of surprise and confusion on Alejandra's face and knew he had to be careful. Through an acquaintance, I found out that she had a daughter after we broke up, he continued, trying to keep his composure. I hired a detective and found out that you are my daughter. Alejandra was shocked. Dr. Marcelo's words echoing in her head. My mother did say that she had lost contact with my father, but I never thought that one day he would come to my house, he said, still trying to process the information. I understand your surprise, but please calm down, Marcelo replied, sensing the tension in the air. He saw tears begin to well up in Alejandra's eyes and felt a surge of sympathy. I'm here to help, he added, trying to reassure her. Emotions overwhelmed Alejandra and she began to cry as the reality of the situation began to set in. My mother always got sad when she talked about the man she loved, she said between sobs. A concerned Dr. Marcelo stood up and gave her a glass of water. Please drink this, he said, handing her the glass. Alejandra drank the water, trying to calm herself down. I want you to know that I didn't come here to cause pain, he said softly. I want to meet you and help you in any way I can. At that moment, Cecilia entered the room, frightened as she heard her mother crying. What's going on? The concern was evident in the girl's voice. Alejandra quickly wiped away her tears and tried to reassure her daughter. Dr. Marcelo Ortiz came to talk to me. Don't worry, honey, everything will be okay. She tried to smile at Cecilia, but the shock and emotion were still clearly visible on her face. Cecilia looked at the strange man warily, sensing the tense atmosphere. Marcelo, with his medical experience, immediately recognized Cecilia's condition. How are you, honey? He asked worriedly. Do you have any health problems? Cecilia tilted her head, feeling vulnerable. Yes, I have some health problems, she replied quietly. Marcelo felt his heart sink at the sight of the little girl's fragility. I will provide you with all the necessary treatments, he said firmly. Tomorrow we will go to my hospital to have a DNA test done to confirm that you are my daughter, and we will also begin treating Cecilia. Alejandra still looked at Marcelo with gratitude. Thank you, Dr. Marcelo, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to thank you for this. Marcelo nodded, feeling a mix of responsibility and hope. It's the least I can do, he replied, trying to reassure himself that he was doing the right thing. He knew that the next few hours and days would be crucial. Let's solve this together, he promised, determined to do whatever was necessary to help Alejandra and Cecilia. As he prepared to leave, Marcelo looked back at Alejandra. We'll get through this, he said, trying to exude confidence. Tomorrow will be a new beginning. Alejandra nodded, feeling a new hope grow in her heart. Thank you for being here, she said again, feeling a little relieved. Marcelo smiled, knowing that this was just the first step of a long journey. "See you tomorrow," he said, leaving the house with a new purpose. The next day, Alejandra and Cecilia will begin a new chapter in their lives. They had arrived at the hospital early in the morning. Alejandra was nervous, but she tried to stay calm so as not to worry Cecilia anymore. When Dr. Marcelo appeared, he greeted mother and daughter warmly, trying to convey confidence. "Good morning, Alejandra." "Good morning, Cecilia," he smiled. "Let's go get the DNA test and start treatment." They walked to the lab, and Dr. Marcelo noticed Alejandra's anxiety. "Don't worry," he said, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. "We'll do this test as a necessary procedure, but I'm sure you're my daughter. I feel it in my heart. Everything will be fine." Alejandra tried to smile, but the worry was still evident on her face. "I hope he's right," she thought, trying to calm herself. Everything depends on these results. After the tests were done, Dr. Marcelo took Cecilia to begin treatment. "We'll take good care of her," he told her, trying to reassure her. Alejandra watched with a mixture of hope and worry. He really wants to help, she thought, feeling somewhat relieved. Maybe things will get better. Dr. Marcelo asked Alejandra to be patient and not tell anyone about the DNA test. "I understand, doctor. I'll keep this a secret," she replied. As the days passed, Alejandra continued to take Cecilia to the hospital for treatment. "I hope the results come back soon," she thought, each visit making her more anxious. Finally, Dr. Marcelo called her to talk. Knowing that she would be there, he asked her to meet him in the hospital cafeteria. When they met, he opened the envelope containing the test results. "The test confirmed it," he said, looking Alejandra straight in the eye. "You are my daughter." Alejandra felt a wave of emotion at those words. "I always wanted to know who my father was," she thought as tears began to roll down her face, "and now he is here, beside me." Dr. Marcelo hugged her, both of them overcome with emotion. "We have so much to say and so much to learn about each other," he said in a broken voice. Alejandra nodded, feeling complete at last. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for finding me." As the two hugged, Alfonso walked into the dining room and saw them. "What is going on here?" he thought, feeling a pang of doubt in his heart. He stepped closer and interrupted the moment. "Dad, who is this woman and why are they hugging?" he asked, his voice filled with doubt. Marcelo looked at Alfonso and realized that he needed to explain everything. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair. "We have something important to discuss." Dr. Marcelo began his story, explaining that he had recently discovered that Alejandra was his daughter. "I had a relationship before I met your mother," he said, trying to be as clear as possible. "The result of that relationship was her, your sister." Alfonso felt a shock course through his body. "My sister," he thought, stunned. "I treated her badly without even knowing it." Dr. Marcelo went on to explain that Alejandra had a daughter named Cecilia, who was being treated in the hospital. "Alejandra and Cecilia are part of our family now," he concluded. Alfonso felt pained as he realized that he had taken his own sister and niece for granted. He thought back to what had happened at the clinic, the memory of the slight still fresh in his mind. Alfonso sensed the tension and tried to mend the situation. "You'll always be welcome, and I'll do everything I can to make you and Cecilia feel like family," he said, his voice soft and apologetic. Alejandra looked at Alfonso, still trying to process everything that had happened. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I really appreciate it." Alfonso responded by holding out his hand, sealing his commitment to Alejandra and Cecilia. Marcelo watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and hope. My family is finally complete, he thought, smiling. We can face anything together. He knew there were still challenges ahead, but the siblings' unity was an important step. Cecilia, who was nearby, watched the scene curiously. What's going on? She asked, concerned. Alejandra crouched down to her daughter's level and smiled. We're getting to know our family, honey, she said. Feeling a newfound hope. And they're going to help us. Cecilia smiled shyly, feeling more secure in the presence of Dr. Marcelo and Alfonso. We will take care of you, Alfonso said, smiling sincerely. You are now part of our family. As she left the cafe, Alejandra felt relieved. We are starting a new stage, she thought, her heart full of hope. And this time we are no longer alone. She looked at Dr. Marcelo and Alfonso, filled with gratitude for having found them. That evening, Cecilia and Alejandra went to Dr. Marcelo Ortiz's house for a family dinner. Alejandra was nervous, but she knew this was an important step. When they arrived at the house, Dr. Ortiz's wife, Roberta, welcomed them. Welcome, Roberta said with a friendly smile. Although her eyes showed initial surprise, she still invited them in. Alejandra was relieved to see the warm welcome. What a pleasure to meet you, said Roberta, who, although surprised, understood the situation. Marcelo told me everything, she explained. He mentioned that you were the product of a relationship before we met. I understand the situation, she said in a soft, understanding voice. Things like this can happen. Roberta looked at Alejandra and Cecilia with a new sense of family responsibility. Alejandra felt relieved and grateful to hear Roberta's words. Thank you for accepting us, she said, her voice filled with emotion. This means a lot to us. Roberta smiled, taking Alejandra's hand. You're welcome here, she said. We're so happy to have you by our side. As dinner continues, Alfonso approaches Alejandra, trying to forge a relationship with his newfound sister. I know I made a mistake, he said with regret in his voice, but I want to make things right from now on. Alejandra looked at Alfonso with mixed emotions. Thank you for your words, she replied, trying to put the past behind us. We're all learning to understand each other. Alfonso nodded, feeling relieved. Let's build a new story together, he promised sincerely. Dr. Marcelo watched the interactions between the people, feeling deeply satisfied. Finally, my family is complete, he thought proudly. We can face all the challenges together. He knows there is still much to be done, but the first step has already been taken. We will get through this, he said confidently. When we are united, we are stronger. The determination in his words reflects the love he has for everyone around him. Roberta, with her usual charm, brought the dessert to the table and smiled. I hope you enjoy this, she said, looking at Alejandra and Cecilia. I made it with love. Alejandra felt tears well up again, but this time they were tears of joy. Thank you, Roberta, she said with emotion in her voice. We are so happy to be here. Cecilia beside him also tried the dessert and smiled. It's delicious, she said, feeling more comfortable. Roberta smiled softly. I'm glad you like it, she said. At the end of the dinner, Dr. Marcelo stood up and toasted. To a new beginning, he said, raising his glass. May we build a strong and united family. They all raised their glasses, feeling the importance of this moment. To new beginnings, they repeated in unison, full of hope and determination. Alejandra looked around, saw the smiling faces of her new family, and felt truly accepted and loved. Let's face the future together, she thought, with a smile full of gratitude. That night, as they said goodbye, Roberta hugged Alejandra and Cecilia. "You will always be welcome here," she said sincerely. "This is your home, too." Hearing those words, Alejandra felt deeply moved. "Thank you, Roberta," she said, squeezing her hand. "This means a lot to us." Cecilia, already tired, smiled shyly. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling safe. Roberta responded with a warm smile. "Whenever you need us, we will always be here," he said, his eyes shining with love. As Alejandra and Cecilia left Dr. Marcelo Ortiz's house, they felt relieved and more hopeful. "We are on a new path," Alejandra thought, squeezing her daughter's hand. Cecilia continues her treatment at her grandfather's hospital, and with each visit the bond between her and Dr. Marcelo Ortiz grows stronger. He always made sure to be closely involved in every stage of the treatment, ensuring that his granddaughter received the best care possible. "I'm here for you, sweetheart," his voice was usually soft and loving. "We will get through this together." Dr. Marcelo's constant presence brought comfort and security to Cecilia, who began to see him as a father figure. Dr. Marcelo felt extremely happy to be by Cecilia's side and care for her, his heart filled with happiness and hope for the future of his family. "As I watched Cecilia smile, I couldn't help but admire her strength and courage, even in the face of the challenges of her treatment. I felt a deep sense of pride in Cecilia's resilience, and every little progress in her treatment was celebrated with enthusiasm." "You're doing great," I praised her, stroking her hair. "Grandpa is so proud of you." Alejandra noticed the growing closeness between her father and daughter, and it filled her with gratitude. They get along so well, she thought, feeling joy at Dr. Marcelo's happiness when he was with Cecilia. Dr. Marcelo's joy when he was with Cecilia also touched Alejandra's heart. "Thank you for everything, Dad," she often said, feeling the sincerity in his words. For her part, Cecilia began to call Dr. Marcelo Grandpa, which filled his heart with joy. "Grandpa, look at what I drew for you," she said, handing him her drawings. Dr. Marcelo admired each piece of art. "It's beautiful, my dear," he complimented, hanging the drawings in his office. "You're so talented." These small interactions brought light to both of them, further strengthening their family bond. As Cecilia continued to recover, Dr. Marcelo made sure to create special moments for her. After each consultation, he would suggest small activities like going for a walk, bringing joy to his granddaughter. "Of course, sir," Cecilia replied enthusiastically. These moments of relaxation were crucial to her recovery, and Dr. Marcelo did everything he could to ensure that his granddaughter had a happy childhood, despite the hardships. With each passing day, Dr. Marcelo felt more and more grateful for the presence of Alejandra and Cecilia in his life. Having a complete family is a blessing, he mused as he watched Cecilia play in the hospital garden. "I'm enjoying every moment." He knew the circumstances that had brought them together had not been easy, but the joy of being with his granddaughter outweighed all the challenges. "I'm here for you," he thought, determined to be the best grandfather he could be. Alejandra also noticed a change in her father. "He seems lighter and happier," she thought as she watched Dr. Marcelo play with Cecilia. "This new phase has brought us so much good." Dr. Marcelo's presence in Alejandra and Cecilia's lives brought a sense of security she had not felt in a long time. "We're really starting a new life," she mused with hope. "And this time, we're more united than ever." 8 years had passed, and Cecilia was now 18, finishing her studies with flying colors. Alejandra looked at her daughter with pride, remembering all the challenges they had overcome together. "What an amazing young woman you have become," she thought with overwhelming happiness. "I am so proud of you." Cecilia, now a determined young woman, had some big news to share with her family. I hope everyone will be pleased with my decision, she thought, eager to see how everyone would react at the family dinner. As everyone gathered around the table, Cecilia decided to share her big decision. I have some news to share, she said, looking around the table, where Dr. Marcelo, Alejandra, Alfonso, and Roberta were waiting expectantly. I have decided to study medicine, she announced, her eyes shining with excitement. I want to follow in my grandfather's footsteps. The room was silent for a moment before it erupted into laughter and applause. Dr. Marcelo felt an immense joy and pride at those words. That's wonderful, my dear, he exclaimed, standing up and hugging his granddaughter. You're going to be an excellent doctor, he told Cecilia with certainty, his heart filled with happiness. I always knew you had great potential, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. I'm so glad you decided to continue this career. Cecilia smiled, feeling loved and supported. Alfonso was also overjoyed by the news. Congratulations, Cecilia, he said, standing up and hugging her. He felt proud of his granddaughter and eager for her success. I'm here to help you, he assured her with a warm smile. Cecilia was grateful, feeling more confident in her choice. Thank you, Uncle Alfonso, she said. I know I can count on you. Alejandra, sitting quietly, watched her daughter with pride and emotion. My daughter is going to be a doctor, she thought, tears of joy rolling down her cheeks. It was all worth it. She moved closer to Cecilia and hugged her tightly. I am so proud of you, my dear, her voice was filled with emotion. You are the fulfillment of all my dreams. Cecilia returned the hug, feeling her mother's unconditional love. Thank you for everything, Mom, she said softly. You have always been my biggest inspiration. Roberta also expressed her joy at Cecilia's decision. We are all so proud of you, she said with a fond smile. I am sure you will be a great doctor, just like your grandfather. Cecilia thanked her, feeling the warmth and welcome of the whole family. I will do my best, she promised, determined to honor her grandfather's legacy and the trust they placed in her. Dr. Marcelo, unable to contain his happiness at the thought of Cecilia's bright future, said, medicine is a challenging but also very rewarding profession. You have chosen a path that your grandfather loves very much. He will be here to guide you every step of the way. His eyes lit up with excitement. Together, we will do great things, Cecilia excitedly shared with her family all night about her plans to go to medical school. I am so excited, she said, sharing details about the universities she was considering. You want to major in pediatrics. Dr. Marcelo smiled, feeling prouder than ever. You have a big heart, and I know you'll be a great pediatrician, he said. The conversation continued with laughter and stories about life in medicine. Over the next few days, Cecilia began preparing for her journey to medical school with the support of her entire family. We'll make sure you have everything you need, Alfonso said, helping her prepare. Your future is important to all of us. Alejandra was also by Cecilia's side, helping her organize her documents and study for exams. We'll support you every step of the way, she said, feeling closer to her daughter than ever. As the family rallied to support Cecilia, Dr. Marcelo reflected on the path that had brought them here. Watching his granddaughter study with such dedication, he felt that Cecilia's decision to pursue medicine was a testament to the strength and resilience of their family. We are stronger together, he thought, deeply grateful for having her family by his side. And the future will be even brighter. Cecilia's first day of medical school arrived. She woke up early, nervous and full of anticipation. Today begins a new chapter, she thought as she got ready. Alejandra, tears of pride in her eyes, helped her daughter get ready. "You will shine, my dear," she said, adjusting the collar of Cecilia's white coat. "I am so proud of you." Cecilia smiled, feeling her mother's love and support, and returned the hug with a big hug. "I wouldn't be here without you." Dr. Marcello also made sure to accompany Cecilia on her first day. "Let's go together," he said, holding his granddaughter's hand. "I want to introduce you to the university." Cecilia felt safe and confident with her grandfather by her side. "Thank you for being here," she said, looking at him with admiration. "You are my inspiration." Dr. Marcello smiled proudly. "You will do great things, my dear," he said as they walked around campus. Over time, Cecilia began to excel in her studies, earning the admiration of her classmates and professors. "You are truly talented," one of the professors said. "Keep up the good work and you will be one of the best doctors I have ever met." These compliments helped Cecilia feel motivated and determined to give her all. "You will make a difference," she thought with renewed confidence. "You are here to help people." Dr. Marcello continued to follow Cecilia's progress closely, offering guidance and advice whenever she needed it. "I will always be here," he said affectionately. "I want to see you achieve all your dreams." Cecilia felt lucky to have such a devoted grandfather. "Thank you, Grandpa," she would say. "You are my greatest inspiration." Dr. Marcello smiled, feeling honored. "And you are my greatest pride," he replied lovingly. On Cecilia's graduation day, Alejandra finally arrived. Dr. Marcello, Alfonso, and Roberta were all there, sitting in the stands with unconcealed pride. "Today is a very special day," Alejandra thought, tears of joy in her eyes. "My daughter did it." She looked at Dr. Marcello, who was also excited. "Our granddaughter is now a doctor," he said softly, having fulfilled a wonderful dream. Cecilia, in her toga, felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I'm finally here," she thought, her heart pounding. "Everything I've been through has been worth it." When her name was called, Cecilia stepped onto the stage, looking down at her family sitting in the audience. "This is ours," she thought as she held her diploma with pride. "Thank you for always believing in me." When Dr. Marcello saw Cecilia on stage, he couldn't hold back his tears. "You are my greatest pride," he thought, his voice filled with emotion. "Cecilia, you are amazing." The applause filled the auditorium, unable to express the joy of seeing Cecilia graduate. After the ceremony, the family gathered to celebrate. "I am so proud of you," Alejandra said, hugging Cecilia tightly. "You have achieved everything we dreamed of." Cecilia returned the hug feeling loved and supported. Alfonso expressed his pride as well. "Congratulations, Cecilia," he said, hugging his niece. "You have done a wonderful job." He was truly happy to see Cecilia fulfill her dream. "I am so happy for you," he continued, "you deserve all the success in the world." Cecilia felt even more inspired. "Thank you, Alfonso," she said. "Your support has always meant a lot to me." Roberta also enthusiastically congratulated Cecilia. "You are an inspiration to all of us," she said, squeezing her hand. "I am sure you will be a great doctor." Cecilia smiled, grateful for the unconditional support from her family. "I will do my best," she promised. "I want to honor our family name." The certainty that she could count on everyone's support gave her the strength to move forward. Dr. Marcello, with a proud smile, looked at Cecilia. "I am so happy for you, my dear," he said, hugging her affectionately. "You are a doctor now." Hearing his grandfather's words, Cecilia felt the unconditional love and support. You have always been my inspiration, she said softly. Dr. Marcello responded with tears in his eyes. He caressed her face and said softly, "And you are my greatest pride." Cecilia's first day at her grandfather's hospital had arrived. She felt a little nervous but also excited. Today is the beginning of a new phase, she thought as she put on her white coat. I am ready for this challenge. Dr. Marcello accompanied her to the reception, proud to see her following in his footsteps. Welcome to the hospital, Dr. Cecilia, he said with a smile. You will do a great job. As she entered the hospital, Cecilia felt a mixture of emotions. This place has always been special to me, she thought, remembering visits from her childhood. Now I am here as a doctor. She looked around, observing her new colleagues. I need to focus and do my best, she resolved. I am ready to help everyone. One of Cecilia's first patients was a little girl named Sophia, who had a respiratory infection. Hello Sophia, Cecilia said with a gentle smile. I'll take care of you, okay? The little girl looked at her with curiosity, then nodded gently, squeezing her mother's hand. Cecilia felt a wave of compassion when she saw the little girl. I'll do everything I can to make her feel better soon, she promised, and began the examination. As she cared for Sophia, Cecilia thought back to her own childhood and the hardships she had faced. I know how important it is to have a doctor who cares, she thought, feeling inspired. I want to be that doctor for my patients. Dr. Marcello watched from a distance, seeing Cecilia's affection and dedication. She really has a calling for this profession, he thought, smiling. I'm so glad you're fulfilling your dream. Cecilia ends her first day at work, reflecting on all that she has achieved and the challenges that lie ahead. I am ready for anything, she thinks with a heart full of gratitude. I have the best support system, and I am determined to be the best doctor I can be. Her journey is just beginning, and Cecilia knows that with the support of her family, she can achieve all her dreams. She smiles and is ready to take on any challenge that lies ahead. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. This helps me continue to share great stories every day. Don't miss the next exciting story that is happening now.